It was raining like a bucket of rain, as if the sky itself were mourning Hambert. I stood at the freshly dug grave, clutching a black umbrella that seemed about to break from my weakened fingers. 73 is a long time, but it was only now, looking at my husband's coffin, that I felt truly old. Mom, are you okay? Denby, my only son, stood beside me, holding my elbow. His face was concerned, but his eyes, there was something else in his eyes that I couldn't understand. Am I okay? My voice sounded muffled. My husband is dead, Denby. The man I lived with for almost 50 years. How do you think I could be okay? He didn't say anything, only squeezed my elbow tighter. Celine, his wife, loomed behind him, wrapped in an expensive black coat. She wasn't even crying. What did I expect, though? She'd never loved Hambert, and neither had I. The priest finished his speech, and the people began to disperse. Someone came up to me, hugged me, said some words of comfort, but it all seemed blurred, unreal, as if I were watching through thick glass. Adelaide, darling. Etta Sallow, my best friend of 40 years, took my hand. Her wrinkled face was wet with tears. I'll come to you tonight, okay? I nodded, unable to utter a word. Etta understood. She'd been widowed 3 years ago, and she knew that no words could help at a time like this. Mama, we'll take you home, said Denby when they were almost all gone. I want to stay here a little longer, I said. But the rain. Rain is just water, Denby. I won't melt. He sighed, looked at Solon, and they walked back to the car, leaving me alone with the grave. What am I going to do without you, Hambert? I whispered, staring at the fresh mound of earth. How am I to live alone? I heard only the sound of rain. When I finally got home, soaked through despite my umbrella, Denby and Solon were already there. Solon was in the kitchen, warming up the food the neighbors had brought, and Denby was in the living room, sorting through some papers. Mom, you need to get changed, he said when I came in. You're all wet. I know what I need, I said sharply, and went upstairs to the bedroom. Our bedroom, mine and Hamber's. The bed was neatly made. Solon must have done her best. Hambert's glasses and an unread book were still on the bedside table. I sat on the edge of the bed, unable to hold back the tears. Only 3 days ago, we'd been lying here together, talking about plans for the summer. Hambert wanted to finally finish repairing the veranda, and I dreamed of new rose bushes for the garden. And then it was morning, and Hambert didn't wake up. Heart attack, the doctor said, quick and painless, as if that was supposed to be comforting. He died in his sleep, unhurt, and I was left to suffer here, alone. After changing into dry clothes, I went downstairs. There was a muffled conversation coming from the kitchen. We must act quickly, Solon said. Now is the best time. Give her time, Denby replied. Father had just died. Time? Solon sounded annoyed. We don't have time, Denby. What if she decides to sell the house? Or will it to someone else? I froze on the stairs. What are they talking about? She won't do that, Denby said. It's our family home. Are you so sure about that? Solon snorted. Your mother was always unpredictable. Remember when she refused to sell that piece of land outside of town? We could have made a good profit on it. I went quietly into the living room, not wanting to hear any more. The plot of land outside of town had belonged to Hambert before we were married. It was his special place where he liked to spend time alone. Of course, I wouldn't let Denby sell it when he suggested it a couple years ago. Hambert was still alive, and the property meant a lot to him. There were still papers in the living room that Denby was sorting through. I moved closer and saw that they were house deeds and bank statements. What was he looking for? Mom, Denby walked into the room and I quickly backed away from the table. You need to eat. Celine heated up the casserole Mrs. Lockwood had brought. I'm not hungry, I replied, but I followed him into the kitchen. No one was talking at the table. I picked at the casserole with my fork, unable to taste it. Denby and Solon exchanged glances as if they were having a silent conversation. Mama, Denby finally said, setting aside his fork. Celine and I were thinking, you shouldn't be alone in a house this big. I looked up at him. What do you mean? Well, this house, it's too big for one person, and it needs constant upkeep. My father was always fixing things up, and now, I'll do it myself from now on, I said firmly, or I'll hire someone if I have to. But, Adelaide, Solon intervened, smiling her fake smile, think about the practical side. You're 73, living alone in such a big house. I'm 73, not 103, Solon. I cut him off, and I can take care of myself just fine. Mom, no one's saying you can't take care of yourself, Denby said softly. We're just worried about you. Since when? I blurted out. Denby looked dumbfounded. What do you mean? Nothing, I shook my head. I was tired. It's been a hard day. Of course, Solon got up from the table. We understand, but think about our offer, okay? Maybe you should move in with us. We have a guest room, and you won't be alone. The thought of living under the same roof as Solon gave me an inner shiver. I'll think about it, I lied. When they finally left, promising to come back tomorrow, I was relieved. The house, so noisy all day, with neighbors, friends, and relatives coming and going, was suddenly quiet. I walked slowly around the rooms, touching Hambert's things, his jacket hanging on a hook in the hallway, his favorite chair, his tools in the garage. This house wasn't just a building of wood and brick. It was our life. We bought it almost 40 years ago when Denby was still a baby. Hambert had just gotten a promotion at the power plant then, and we could finally afford our own place. I remember the first time we walked in here, the peeling paint, the creaky floorboards, the leaky roof. The real estate agent looked at us with doubt, but Hambert saw the potential. Imagine, Adelaide, he said, putting his arm around my shoulders. We'll make this a big, bright kitchen, and there, in the corner, will be your chair where you can read books. And in the backyard, I'll build a swing for Denby. And we did it, with our own hands, saving every dollar, working evenings and weekends. Hambert learned everything: laying tile, fixing the roof, installing windows. I painted walls, sewed curtains, planted flowers in the garden. Denby grew up with the house. We marked his growth with a pencil on the kitchen door jamb. And now Denby wants me to leave it all behind? Move in with them, into their sterile modern house with the minimalist design that Solon loves so much? Never. I always knew that Celine didn't marry Denby for love. He was a successful real estate agent with prospects, a steady income, and she wanted status. She wanted to be the wife of a successful man. I could see it from the start, but Denby was blinded by her beauty and charm. He's always been like that, easily influenced, especially when that influence comes from an attractive woman. When they married 12 years ago, I'd hoped I was wrong, that Solon really loved my son, that she would become part of our family. But over the years, it became clear that I was right. She alienated Denby from us, turned him against his parents, especially me. The visits became less frequent, the calls shorter, and when they did come, Celine always found an excuse to criticize. My house, my cooking, my garden. Nothing was good enough for her. And now that Hambert's dead, they're suddenly so concerned, interested in the deed to the house? No, something's not right. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my musings. There was Etta with a bag of groceries and a bottle of wine. I thought you could use some company, she said as she entered the house, and some booze. You're right as always, I smiled, For the first time that day, we sat in the kitchen, drinking wine and reminiscing about Hambert. Etta had known him almost as long as I had. Our families had been friends for decades. "Remember when he tried to fix the roof of your store?" I asked, and we both laughed, remembering how Hambert had fallen through a rotten board and gotten stuck dangling his feet from the ceiling of Etta's flower store while the fire department pulled him out. "He was a good man," Etta said when the laughter subsided. "Quiet but dependable. There aren't many like him these days." "Yeah," I sighed. "I don't know what I'll do without him, Etta." "The same thing I did after Harold died." She shrugged. "Move on, day by day. Sometimes it will be unbearably hard, sometimes a little easier. But you'll get through it, Adelaide. You've always been stronger than you think." I told her about the strange conversation between Denby and Selene, about the papers on the table, about their offer to move. "They're up to something," Etta said, frowning. "Be careful, Adelaide, especially with Selene. That woman never does anything for nothing." "Do you think they want to take over the house?" I asked. "I don't know, but keep your eyes open and don't sign any papers without reading them carefully." When Etta left, I couldn't sleep for a long time. The bed felt too big, too empty without Hambert. I thought back to our life together, not always easy, but always filled with love and respect. We were partners in everything, sharing joys and sorrows, supporting each other. Denby was our pride, our only child. We dreamed so much of having a big family, but after a difficult labor, the doctors said I couldn't have more children. So we put everything into Denby. Our love, our hopes, our dreams. He was a smart boy, did well in school, went to college. When he decided to become a real estate agent, we supported him, although Hambert secretly hoped that his son would follow in his footsteps and become an electrician. That all changed when he met Selene. She worked as an accountant in the same firm where Denby started his career. Beautiful, confident, ambitious. She immediately charmed him, and 6 months later they were engaged. I remember Hambert trying to warn Denby, saying they knew each other too little, that they shouldn't rush into it. But Denby didn't listen. He was in love and blind. The wedding was lavish at Celine's insistence. She wanted everyone in Caldwell to know that she was marrying a promising young real estate agent. Hambert and I paid most of the expenses, although it took a big hit on our savings. Denby promised to pay us back when he got back on his feet, but he never did, and Celine never even thanked us. After the wedding, we saw them less and less. Denby was always busy with work, and Celine just didn't want to spend time with us. She thought we were too simple, not sophisticated enough for her taste. I've heard her tell her friends that her mother-in-law was just a former elementary school teacher and her father-in-law was a simple power plant worker. Like there was something shameful about it. Hambert told me to ignore it, that Solon was still young and would change with time. But she hasn't changed. Over the years, she'd only driven Denby further away from us. And now that Hambert's gone, I'm alone against them both. But I'm not going down without a fight. This house is all I have left of my life with Hambert, and I won't let Celine or anyone else take it from me. With that thought, I finally fell asleep, clutching Hambert's pillow tightly, still holding his scent. It had been 2 weeks since we'd buried Hambert. 2 weeks of emptiness and silence. I wandered around the house like a ghost, touching the things he and I had shared for so many years. His chair in the living room, his cup on the kitchen shelf, his glasses on the bedside table. All these objects now seemed orphaned, like myself. The mornings started the same way. I would wake up, turn to his side of the bed, and my heart would clench at the realization that he was gone. Then there was coffee on the veranda, alone, and a long day ahead that needed something to fill. That morning, I decided to put the garage in order. Hambert had always put this task off, saying that creative clutter is a sign of genius. Now, going through his tools, sorting nails and screws by size, I felt strangely comforted. It was as if I were continuing a conversation with him, unfinished when he was alive. The doorbell rang, and I found myself with a box of dowels in my hands. I hurried to the door, wiping my dusty hands on my apron. Denby stood on the doorstep with a paper bag from the local bakery. "Good morning, Mom." He smiled and waved the bag. "I brought your favorite cinnamon buns." It was his third visit in a week, unusual for a son who'd only been at his parents' house once a month or so, and then only for a short time. "Thank you." I let him in. "I was just about to take a break. I'm tearing out the garage." "The garage?" Denby frowned. "Mom, you shouldn't be doing such hard work. I could help with that, or hire someone." "It's not hard work, Denby." I shrugged. "And I need something to do." In the kitchen, I put the kettle on and took out plates for scones. Denby sat down at the table, watching me carefully. "How are you coping?" he asked. "Day by day," I answered honestly. "Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Solon and I are very worried about you, Mom. You're all alone here." I set the cups down on the table abruptly. "I'm doing fine, Denby, and I'm not alone. I have neighbors, friends. Etta comes over almost every day." "Etta?" he snorted. "Mom, she's 75 herself. What can she do if you fall or get sick, for example?" "The same thing normal people do. Call an ambulance." I poured the tea. "Denby, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not a helpless child." He sighed and took a scone. "Solene and I have been talking about this, and we think it's best for you to move in with us. We have a guest room. It overlooks the garden. You'll be comfortable there." I sipped my tea slowly, considering my answer. "What's going to happen to this house?" "Well," Denby hesitated a little. "We could sell it. There's a good real estate market right now, and a house in this neighborhood will be worth a lot. Or rent it out. It'll give you some extra income." "Sell the house?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Denby, this is our family home. Your father and I put our hearts and souls into it. Every corner of it holds our memories." "Mom, it's just a building," he shrugged. "Memories will stay with you wherever you live." "No," I shook my head. "I'm not selling the house and moving." Denby looked annoyed, but quickly pulled himself together. "Okay, Mom, it's your decision, but promise to think about it, okay? Solon is very worried about you." "Really?" I couldn't help but be sarcastic. "Solon, who in 12 years of marriage has never once invited me to your place without a reason? Who always found a reason to leave when your father and I came to visit?" "Mother, that's not fair." Denby frowned. "Solon has always been good to you." "If that's what you think," I didn't want to argue. It was useless to open my eyes to someone who didn't want to see. After Denby left, I went back to tearing down the garage, but the mood was ruined. What were he and Celine up to? Why are they so insistent on selling the house? Etta called this evening. "How are you, darling?" "Denby's been over again," I said. "He insists I move in with them and sell the house." "Didn't you?" "Of course I refused. This house is all I have left of Hambert's." "I don't like it," Etta grumbled. "I've never seen Denby take such good care of you. And now, all of a sudden, all this attention." "I don't like it either," I agreed. "But what can they do? The house is in my and Hambert's name. Now that he's gone, it's mine alone." "Are you sure? Did you check the deeds?" "I've been thinking. There's been so much to do since Hambert died. I didn't even think to check the deed to the house. You know, I think I'll look at them tomorrow," I said, just to be sure. The next day, Solon arrived. Alone, without Denby. That was unusual. She usually avoided being alone with me. "Denby's in a meeting with a client." she explained as she walked into the house. I thought I'd stop by and see if you needed any help. She was dressed as impeccably as ever, a cream pantsuit, pearl earrings, her hair neatly styled. Looking at her, I suddenly realized how unkempt I looked myself. Old jeans, washed out t-shirt, hair in a sloppy bun. Thanks, but I can manage, I said as I led her into the kitchen. Would you like some tea? No, thanks. She sat cross-legged at the table. Adelaide, I've come to talk about Denby's offer, about you moving in with us. I sighed. I'd already told him I didn't want to move in. But why? She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Think about it. This house is too big for one person. It needs constant maintenance, repairs. With us, you'll be taken care of. We'll look after you. I don't need looking after, Solon. I poured myself a cup of tea. I can take care of myself just fine. For now, perhaps. She leaned forward. But what about a year from now? In 2? You're not getting any younger, Adelaide, and old age can come suddenly. One day you're still active, and the next you can't walk up the stairs without help. If that happens, I'll get a nurse, I said, or move into a nursing home. But as long as I'm of sound mind, I'll stay in my house. Solon's face contorted with irritation for a moment, but she quickly pulled herself together. Good, she said, rising. I can see that we will not come to an agreement today. But think about our proposal, okay? Denby and I only want what's best for you. When she left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, thinking. Something about her visit seemed insincere, contrived, like she was playing the role of the caring daughter-in-law, but that wasn't what her heart was in. In the evening, I pulled out the file folder that Hambert and I kept in the secretary in the living room. It contained all the important papers, birth certificates, marriage certificates, insurance, house deeds. I opened the folder and started going through the papers, but I couldn't find the certificate of title for the house anywhere. That was odd. I distinctly remembered it being here. Hambert and I occasionally went through the paperwork, renewing insurance. The last time was about 6 months ago when we decided to renew the house insurance. The certificate was definitely here then. I started frantically going through papers, checking other folders, secretary drawers. Nothing. The certificate was gone. It couldn't be a coincidence. First, Denby and Solon's strange behavior, their persistent offers to sell the house, and now the missing documents. I decided to call Etta, but the phone rang before I could pick it up. Adelaide? It was Denby's voice. How are you? I'm fine, I said, deciding not to mention the missing documents. Celine stopped by today. Yes, she did. Mom, I was wondering if you found the insurance papers. I want to see if your insurance is in order since your father died. So that's it. They're looking for the papers. No, Denby, I haven't seen them, I lied. But I'll look and I'll let you know if I do. Okay, Mom. One more thing. Solon and I are having a little dinner this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just a few friends. We'd like you to come. It was unexpected. They've never invited me to their parties before. I'll think about it, I said cautiously. Please come, he sounded insistent. It would do you good to get away, and Solon really wants you to be there. Okay, I'll come, I agreed, intrigued by this sudden invitation. After talking to Denby, I called Etta and told her about the missing documents and the strange dinner invitation. Be careful, Adelaide, she warned me. Something's not right here. Don't sign any papers, even if they say it's just a formality. On the day of the dinner, I put on my best dress, a dark blue one with little pearl buttons, a gift from Hambert for our 40th anniversary. I wanted to look dignified and confident. Denby and Solon's house was in Caldwell's new neighborhood, large, modern, with a perfectly manicured lawn. When I pulled up, there were several cars already there. Apparently, the guests had arrived. Denby met me at the door with a big smile. Mom, You look beautiful. He kissed me on the cheek and led me into the living room, where the guests were already gathered. I recognized some of them, a couple of Denby's neighbors, a work colleague, and his wife. But there was also an unfamiliar man in an austere suit, looking at me intently. Adelaide, I'd like you to meet Richard Davis, Celine introduced him, approaching with a glass of wine. He's a friend of ours and lawyer. A lawyer? Why would they need a lawyer at a friendly dinner? Nice to meet you, Richard said, shaking my hand. Denby and Solon have told me a lot about you. Nothing bad, I hope, I joked, but I tensed inside. Dinner was tense, despite Solon's attempts to keep the conversation casual. I could feel Richard's eyes on me, and I noticed Denby and Solon exchanging meaningful glances. After dessert, when everyone had moved into the living room for coffee, Denby took me aside. Mom, there's something important we'd like to talk to you about, he said quietly. Richard is here to help us with some legal matters. What kind of issues? I asked bluntly. About your house. He lowered his eyes. We think you should deed it to us to avoid future tax problems. Richard has all the paperwork ready. So here's the deal. This whole dinner was to convince me to give them my house. No, I said firmly. I will not remortgage the house. But, Mom, no, Denby, it's my house, and it's gonna stay my house. I headed for the exit, but Solon blocked my path. Adelaide, be reasonable. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were cold. You're not young anymore. It's hard for you to maintain such a large house. We just want to help. Help? I looked her straight in the eye. Or help yourself. That's when my phone rang. It was Etta. Adelaide, are you there? Her voice sounded worried. I'm calling to see if everything is all right. Yes, I was just leaving, I said, looking at Solon. I'll be home in 20 minutes. I walked around Solon and headed for the door, but Denby caught up with me in the hallway. Mom, wait. He grabbed my hand. You don't understand. We need this house. We're in debt. The bank could take our house if we don't find the money. Your house is our only chance. I stopped, stunned by his confession. And that's why you decided to take my house? Instead of just asking for help? We knew you wouldn't agree to sell it. His voice shook. You've always been so stubborn. Stubborn? I couldn't believe my ears. Denby, this is the house you grew up in, the home your father and I built for you. And you're calling me stubborn because I won't give it up. That's when Celine came out into the hallway. She didn't know that Denby had already confessed to me. Denby, have you prepared those documents? She asked. We need her to sign them today. The notary is expecting us tomorrow at 10. She faltered when she saw the look on my face. What documents, Solon? I asked quietly. The transfer of the house? Or a declaration that I'm incapacitated? Solon turned pale, but quickly pulled herself together. Don't be ridiculous, Adelaide. She tried to smile. We're just looking after you. Care? I grinned bitterly. You know, Solon, you've always been a bad actress. I saw right through you from the start. You didn't marry Denby because you loved him, but because he was promising. And you always looked upon me and Hambert as a hindrance, as something to be overcome. Mother, Denby exclaimed. How can you say that? Because it's true. I turned to him. And deep down inside, you know it too. She never loved us, Denby. Not me, not your father. And now she's convinced you to betray your father's memory and cheat on your own mother for money. I opened the door and walked out without looking back. As I got into the car, I felt tears running down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of anger. When I pulled up to my house, Etta was already waiting there, sitting on the porch with her cat on her lap. I knew something was up, she said when she saw my face. What did they do? I told her all about the lawyer, about the papers, about Denby's confession. Those scoundrels, Etta exclaimed. What are you going to do? I looked at my house. Cozy, dear, full of memories. The house that Humbert and I had made with our own hands. I'm going to fight, I said firmly. I won't let them take it from me. This is my Adelaide. Etta hugged me. And I will be there for you no matter what happens. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night, thinking about Denby and Solon, about their plans to take over my house. What would they do next? Would they try to forge my signature? Or would they think of some other way? One thing I knew for sure, they wouldn't stop, and I had to be ready for their next move. I woke up at first light, determined to figure things out. After talking to Denby and Solon last night, there was no doubt in my mind that they were really trying to take over my house. But how? What are they up to? Hastily making coffee, I returned to the living room secretary. In my haste yesterday, I might have missed something. The deeds to the house should be here somewhere. I methodically went through the folders, pulling out drawers, checking every envelope. Nothing. The certificate of title was gone, as was a copy of Hambert's will. All that remained were insurance papers, utility bills, and old tax returns. Suddenly, I remembered the insurance papers that Denby and Solon had brought me to sign right after Hambert's funeral. They said it was necessary to reissue the insurance after his death. I was in such grief that I barely looked at them before I signed. A cold shiver ran down my back. Were they really not insurance documents? What if they had tricked me into signing something else? I rushed to the phone and dialed Etta's number. Etta, I need your help, I said as soon as she answered. Could you take me to the notary? I have to check the deeds to the house. Sure, honey. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Etta said without further ado. That's what a true friend is. I dressed quickly, choosing a dark blue suit, the same one I'd once worn to parent-teacher conferences. It gave me the confidence I needed right now. Etta pulled up in her old Buick exactly 20 minutes later. You look like a woman ready to fight, she said as I got into the car. I am, I nodded. I'm pretty sure Denby and Solon forged my signature on some documents. I need to find out exactly what they're up to. On the way out, I told Etta about the missing papers and my suspicions about the insurance papers I'd signed after the funeral. That's a serious charge, Adelaide. Etta frowned. Forging documents is a felony. I know, I sighed. That's why we need proof. Mr. Green, our notary, should have copies of all important documents related to the house. Mr. Green had been a notary in Caldwell for over 30 years. He had notarized all of Hambert and I's documents, from our marriage certificate to our will. His office was in an old brick building in the center of town, near the town square. When we pulled up, I noticed a familiar car in the parking lot, Denby's silver Lexus. My heart clenched. So they're already here. Look, I pointed to Etta's car. They're already at the notary's office. What do we do? Etta asked, looking at me anxiously. Let's go in and find out what they're up to, I said firmly. We went up to the second floor and came to a door with a sign that read, Richard Green, Notary Public. Through the frosted glass, we could see the silhouettes of several people inside. Ready? Etta whispered. I nodded and opened the door. A young receptionist sat in the reception area, and the door to Mr. Green's office was ajar. Voices were coming from there. Mrs. Birdwhistle, the secretary exclaimed in surprise. Do you have an appointment? No, but I need to see Mr. Green right away, I said firmly, and without waiting for an answer, I went to the door. When I opened the door, I froze on the threshold. Mr. Green was sitting at the big oak desk, with Denby and Solon across from him. There were some papers in front of them. Mom? Denby jumped up, his face white. What are you doing here? I could ask the same thing, I said coldly, entering the office. Etta followed at my heels. Mrs. Birdwhistle, Mr. Green looked puzzled. I wasn't expecting you today. Apparently, I walked over to the desk and looked at the papers. It was the deed transferring ownership of the house, my house, and they had my signature on them. What's this? I pointed at the papers, feeling a wave of anger rising inside. Mr. Green coughed. They're deeds of gift of your house to your son and his wife. Didn't you? Didn't you know? No, I cut him off. I never agreed to donate my house. This signature, I jabbed my finger at the document, is a forgery. Mom, Denby stood up, his voice shaking. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly well. I interrupted him. You and Celine have been trying to trick me into taking over my house. First, you tried to convince me to move in with you, and when that didn't work, you decided to forge documents. Adelaide, Solon interjected with a strained smile. You've got it all wrong. We just wanted to… Spare me your explanations, Solon. I turned to Mr. Green. Minus Mr. Green, I'm hereby declaring for the record that I never signed any deed to the house. This signature is a forgery. Mr. Green looked at me carefully, then at the documents, then at Denby and Solon. A heavy silence hung in the room. Mr. and Mrs. Birdwhistle, he said at last, turning to Denby and Solon. This is a very serious charge. If Mrs. Birdwhistle Sr. claims that she did not sign these documents, we cannot proceed with the decorating process. But she did, Solon exclaimed, losing her temper. We have proof. What kind of proof? I asked. Those insurance documents you gave me to sign after Hambert's funeral? Those were the deeds of gift? From the guilty look on Denby's face, I realized I'd hit the mark. Mom, we just wanted to keep you safe, he murmured. You're alone in such a big house. Liar, I said quietly. You're lying, Denby. You needed money and you decided to get it by selling my house. But first, you had to take possession of it. Solon straightened up, her face hard. Yes, we need money. We're in debt, Adelaide. The bank is threatening to foreclose on our house. We thought you'd understand, help your son. But you've always been selfish. I'm selfish? I couldn't believe my ears. Me, who gave my whole life to my family. Who worked with Humbert to save every dollar so Denby could go to college. Who paid for your wedding even though it took a toll on our savings. Mrs. Birdwhistle. Mr. Green raised his hand, trying to calm the situation. Let's all calm down and get this straight. If you claim you didn't sign these documents, we can verify the signature. I have samples of your signature on other documents. Check, I nodded. And I would also like copies of all the documents related to my house. The originals are missing from my house. Missing? Minus Mr. Green raised his eyebrows. That's serious. Yes, I looked directly at Denby and Solon. Someone took them from my secretary, and I think I know exactly who. Denby lowered his eyes, unable to bear my gaze. Solon, on the other hand, looked at me with challenge. Minus Mr. Green, I said. I want to report an attempted fraud. These people tried to cheat me out of my property by forging my signature. Mom, you can't be serious. Denby looked frightened. We're your family. Family doesn't do that, Denby. I shook my head. Family doesn't cheat each other for money. Mr. Green looked very serious. Mrs. Birdwhistle, if you're sure of your accusations, I should inform you that forgery is a criminal offense. Would you like to go to the police? I looked at Denby, my only son, the one I loved more than life, and Solon, the woman who had taken him from me and Hambert, and now she was trying to take our house. Yes, I said firmly. I want to go to the police. Mom, no. Denby grabbed my hand. Please, let's talk. We'll explain everything. Explain what? I pulled my hand free. How you plan to leave me homeless? How you forged my signature? How you stole documents from my house? We wouldn't have left you homeless, Denby argued hotly. You'd have a room in our house. Until the bank took that away, too? I grinned bitterly. And then what? A nursing home? Solon suddenly gathered the papers from the table. This conversation is pointless. We're leaving. Oh no. Etta, who had been silent until now, blocked her way. You're not going anywhere with those papers. Stand back, old woman. Solon gritted her teeth. Solon, Denby exclaimed. What are you doing? What you should have done from the beginning. She turned to him. Your mother will never agree to help us. She's always been against me, against us. She cares more about this old house than her own son. That's not true, I shook my head. I've loved you, Denby, all my life. I still do. But I won't let you cheat me and steal what is rightfully mine. Everyone, please calm down. Mr. Green rose from the table. Mrs. Birdwhistle, Jr., please put the documents on the table. They will remain here until the circumstances are clarified. Celine hesitated for a second, then threw the papers on the desk and stepped back to the window, crossing her arms over her chest. I'll call the police, Mr. Green said, picking up the phone. No, wait. Denby looked desperate. Mom, please, let's solve this as a family, without the police. I looked at my son, at his pleading eyes, and felt my heart break with pain, but I couldn't let them get away with it. Not after what they'd tried to do. Minus Mr. Green, make the call, I said firmly. While Mr. Green talked to the police, a heavy silence hung in the office. Denby sat with his head down. Celine paced nervously by the window, and Etta and I stood by the door so no one could get out. The police will be here in 10 minutes, Mr. Green announced, hanging up the phone. In the meantime, I'd like to check the signatures on the papers. He took other papers with my signature from the cabinet and began to compare them carefully with the signature on the deed of gift. Yes, there are clear differences. He nodded after a short examination. The signature on the deed of gift looks forged. Of course it's forged. I walked over to the table. I never signed those papers. No, you didn't, Solon exclaimed. She signed them herself after Hambert's funeral. We just didn't fully explain to her what they were. You've just admitted to deception, Celine, I said quietly. And that deception has a legal name, fraud. I didn't admit to anything. She turned back to the window. 10 minutes of waiting seemed like an eternity. Finally, there was a knock on the door, and two police officers, a middle-aged man and a young woman, entered. Officer Jenkins, the man introduced himself. We received a report of a possible fraud. Mr. Green briefly explained the situation, showed documents with forged signatures. Mrs. Birdwhistle, the officer turned to me. Are you saying you didn't sign these documents? Yes, I nodded. I never agreed to donate my house. These people, I pointed to Denby and Solon, tricked me into signing, saying they were insurance papers after my husband died. That's a serious accusation, the officer frowned. Mr. and Mrs. Birdwhistle, what have you to say in your defense? Denby remained silent, staring at the floor. Solon, on the other hand, straightened up and looked at the officer defiantly. This is a family misunderstanding, officer, she said coldly. My mother-in-law just forgot what she signed. She's an old woman, and after her husband's death, her memory isn't always reliable. What? I couldn't believe my ears. Are you accusing me of dementia? I'm just stating the facts, Adelaide. Solon shrugged. You've been forgetting things a lot lately. That's a lie, Etta intervened. Adelaide is in perfect health and has a clear memory. I can attest to that as a close friend of hers. Officer, Mr. Green held out the papers to the policeman. I have compared the signatures, and in my opinion, the signature on the deed of gift does not correspond to Mrs. Birdwhistle's original signature. Officer Jenkins scrutinized the papers, then nodded. I agree, there are clear differences here. Mr. and Mrs. Birdwhistle, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us to the station to testify. What? Solon looked shocked. You can't arrest us. This is not an arrest, ma'am, the officer replied calmly. We just want to get your statement on the case. If everything is as you say and it's just a misunderstanding, you'll be free soon. Denby finally raised his eyes and looked at me. There was pleading in his gaze, desperation, and shame. Mom, his voice trembled. We're sorry. We didn't mean for things to turn out this way. We're desperate. The bank's threatening to foreclose on our house. We've got huge debts. Shut up, Denby, Solon hissed. Don't say anything without a lawyer. But Denby didn't seem to hear her. It was Celine's idea, he continued. She said no one would find out, that you wouldn't even notice the switched documents. I knew it was wrong, but we were so desperate for money. That's enough. Celine looked furious. You're ruining everything. No, Celine, Denby said quietly. You're the one who ruined everything. You and your greed. Officer Jenkins beckoned to his partner, and she walked over to Solon. Mrs. Birdwhistle, please come with us, she said firmly. I'm not going anywhere with you. Solon tried to move away, but the officer blocked her way. Ma'am, if you refuse to cooperate, we will be forced to arrest you for disobeying a police officer, she said calmly. Solon froze, her eyes shooting lightning bolts. All right, she finally hissed. I'll go with you, but my lawyer will meet me there. Officer Jenkins turned to me. Mrs. Birdwhistle, we're going to need your statement as well. You can come with us now or come over later when it's convenient for you. I'll come later, I said tiredly. I need some time. Of course, the officer nodded. We'll wait for you until 6 o'clock this evening. When the police took Denby and Solon away, it was just me, Etta, and Mr. Green. Mrs. Birdwhistle. Mr. Green looked genuinely upset. I must apologize. I did not check the authenticity of your signature carefully enough. It was my mistake. It wasn't your fault, Mr. Green. I shook my head. You couldn't have known that my own son was capable of such a thing. Nevertheless, I feel responsible. He pulled a folder from the cabinet. Here are copies of all the deeds to your house. There's the title deed, your husband's will, all the necessary papers. I recommend you keep them in a safe place, perhaps in a safe deposit box. Thank you. I took the folder. Thank you for trusting me. I've known you and your family for many years, Mrs. Birdwhistle, he said softly, and I know you're an honest man. Etta and I left the notary's office and walked slowly down the stairs. I felt devastated, as if all my strength had left me. Are you all right? Etta asked when we got into the car. No, I answered honestly. My son tried to trick me, to steal my house. How can I be okay? It's not your fault, Adelaide. Etta squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. The right thing? I grinned bitterly. I just sent my own son to the police. Hambert would never forgive me for that. Hambert would have understood, Etta said firmly. He'd always valued honesty and fairness, and he wouldn't have approved of what Denby and Solon had done. I nodded, holding back tears. Take me home, Etta. I just want to be alone. Are you sure? She looked worried. I can stay with you. No, I shook my head. I need time to think about things. Decide what to do next. Etta reluctantly agreed and drove me home. Before she left, she hugged me and promised to call me tonight. Left alone, I walked slowly around the house, touching familiar objects, remembering the moments associated with each one. Here, in this living room, Denby took his first steps. Here, in this kitchen, we celebrated his entrance into college. Here, in this garden, Hambert taught him how to ride his bike. How did we get to the point where my only son was trying to trick me into stealing my house? At 6 in the evening, I arrived at the police station as promised. Officer Jenkins met me and escorted me to an interview room where I told everything I knew about Denby and Solon's attempt to take possession of my house. "Do you want to press formal charges?" he asked when I was done. I was silent for a long time, thinking about the consequences. If I pressed charges, Denby and Solon could end up in jail. My only son behind bars. Could Hambert forgive me for that? But if I don't press charges, what's to stop them from trying again? What if they were more careful next time? "Yes," I finally said firmly. "I want to press charges for attempted fraud." Officer Jenkins nodded and began filling out the form. "Mrs. Birdwhistle, are you sure? This is your family. Families shouldn't do this to each other," I replied quietly. "And I have to protect myself and my home." After signing the necessary papers, I walked out of the station feeling strangely relieved. I had done what I had to do, protected myself and the memory of Hambert from betrayal. At home, I sat on the veranda, watching the sunset. The wind rustled the leaves of the maple tree that Hambert and I had planted the year Denby was born. How much hope we'd pinned on our son. How much love we had put into him. A phone call snapped me out of my musings. It was Etta. "Did you press charges?" she asked without preamble. "Yes," I answered. "I had to do it." "You did the right thing, Adelaide," Etta said with confidence. "They have to answer for their actions." "I know," I sighed. "But that doesn't make it any easier." "It will get easier in time," she said softly. "You're a strong woman, Adelaide. You'll get through this." After my talk with Etta, I sat on the veranda for a long time, thinking about the future. What now? How do you go on, knowing that your only son has betrayed you? But deep down inside, I knew I could handle it. I had survived Hambert's death, and I would survive this. I protected my home, my life with Hambert, our memories, and no one, not even my own son, had the right to take that away from me. I sat in the kitchen, mindlessly stirring the long cold tea. It had been 3 days since I had reported my own son to the police, and the world around me still seemed unreal, as if I were watching from the outside. Heavy, uninvited thoughts plagued me day and night. Had I done the right thing? Had I treated Denby too harshly? Should I have given him another chance? But every time the doubts began to overwhelm me, I remembered his face in the notary's office, not remorseful, but frightened, scared of being caught, not of what he'd done. And Celine's face, cold, calculating, almost malicious. They planned to rob me of my home, the only place where the memory of Hambert lives. No, I did the right thing. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I didn't want to talk to anyone, but I picked it up. It could have been Etta. "Yes," I answered tiredly. "Mrs. Birdwhistle?" There was an unfamiliar male voice. "This is Warren Twelvetrees, a reporter for the Caldwell Times. I'd like to ask you a few questions about the situation with your son, and—" I hung up before I finished. Of course, the local paper couldn't miss such a scoop, a respected real estate agent and his wife being accused of attempted fraud by their own mother. The phone rang again, but I didn't bother to answer it. Instead, I went to the window. It was a clear autumn day outside, the sun illuminating the colorful leaves in my garden. Hamber had always loved this time of year. "Fall is when nature shows how beautiful it can be to let go," he used to say. I smiled at that memory, but the smile quickly faded. How do I let go of betraying my only son? The ringing of the doorbell made me wince. I wasn't expecting visitors, and I wasn't sure I wanted to see anyone. Cautiously approaching the door, I looked through the peephole. Denby stood on the threshold. My heart clenched. I wasn't ready for this meeting. Not now, not so soon, but he was my son, no matter what. "Mom, I know you're home." His voice sounded muffled through the door. Please open the door. We need to talk. I took a deep breath and opened the door, but I didn't remove the chain. What do you want, Denby? I asked, trying to keep my voice firm. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his cheeks, his clothes wrinkled. Not at all like the immaculately dressed real estate agent he'd always been. Mom, please. There was a pleading look in his eyes. Let me explain. I made a terrible mistake, I know, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I hesitated for a moment, then removed the chain and opened the door. You have 5 minutes, I said, letting him into the house. We went into the kitchen, where I silently pointed to a chair. I stood with my arms crossed over my chest. Go ahead, I said. Denby lowered his head, gathering his thoughts. Mom, I know what Solon and I did was unforgivable, he began. But you have to understand, we were desperate. The bank was threatening to foreclose on our house. We had huge debts. And that's why you decided to steal my house? I interrupted. To leave me without a roof over my head? No, he looked up at me. We would never leave you homeless. You'd have a room in our house. We'd take care of you. Until we sold my house and paid off my debts. And then what? When I'd be a burden to you? Mom, it's not like that. Denby looked genuinely upset. We meant well. This house is too big for you alone. It needs constant upkeep. After Dad died, we were just worried about you. Really? I was being sarcastic. So instead of talking to me honestly, you decided to forge documents and steal my house? It was Solon's idea, Denby said quietly. She said you were too stubborn, that you'd never agree to sell the house willingly, that it was the only way to help you and us. Solon has always only cared about herself. I shook my head. And you let her manipulate you, betray your own mother. I made a mistake. He lowered his head. A terrible mistake. And I'm ready to answer for it. But, Mom. He looked up at me pleadingly. Please take the statement from the police. If this goes to trial, my career is over. No one would trust an agent convicted of fraud with a deal. That's it. He didn't come to apologize. He came to ask me to save his career. Are you thinking about your career? I said slowly. After what you did, you're worried about your career? Mom, understand it's all I have. He sounded desperate. If I lose my license, how will I make money? How am I going to support my family? A family? I grinned bitterly. You betrayed your family, Denby. Me and your father's memory. For what? For money and for that woman who never loved you or us. That's not true. He jumped out of his chair. Celine loves me. She's just practical. She wanted to protect our family, our home. At the expense of my home? I shook my head. No, Denby, I'm not taking this statement. You and Celine have to answer for what you did. You don't understand. His voice shook. If this goes to trial, Celine could be convicted too. She could end up in prison. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? I asked calmly. When you plan to cheat me and take my house? Denby was silent, unable to find an answer. Go away, Denby. I pointed to the door. I'm tired, and I have nothing more to say to you. Mom, please. He took a step toward me. It was for your own good. You'd be living with us, under our care. You wouldn't have to worry about bills, about repairs, about freedom, about dignity, about the right to decide my own life. I added, go away. Now he looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly and headed for the door. On the threshold, he turned around. I love you, Mom, he said quietly. No matter what, and I always will. When the door closed behind him, I sank down in my chair, feeling the tears finally break through. I cried long and bitterly, mourning not only my son's betrayal, but the bond between us that seemed to have broken irrevocably. In the evening, Etta called. She knew at once from my voice that something was wrong. Denby was here, I said, and that was enough. I'll be right over, Etta said firmly. And I'm bringing wine, lots of wine. Half an hour later, we were sitting in the living room, with glasses of red wine, and I was telling her about Denby's visit. So he came to ask you to withdraw your application, Etta said thoughtfully when I had finished. To save his career. And Solon from possible prison, I nodded. Not a word of genuine remorse, just looking out for herself and her own interests. The apple of the tree, Etta began, but stopped short when she saw my face. I'm sorry, Adelaide. I didn't mean to. It's all right, I said with a wave of my hand. You're right. Denby's always been a little selfish, but I never thought he'd be capable of such betrayal. It's Solon's influence, Etta said with conviction. She was always greedy for money and status. Remember how she insisted that the wedding be at the Blue Cross, the most expensive restaurant in town? And how the rumor went around afterward that the bill was never paid in full? I nodded, remembering. Solon always wanted to live the high life, even if the means didn't allow it. Speaking of Solon, Etta leaned toward me. Have you heard what she's been saying about you in town? No, I tensed. What? She's spreading rumors that you're getting dementia. Etta's face darkened. She says you've been forgetful since Hambert died, that you signed the deed of gift and then forgot about it. What? I couldn't believe my ears. How dare she? That's not all. Etta took a sip of wine. She also says that you and Denby discussed the possibility of you moving into a nursing home because it was getting hard for you to live alone. And that when you found out about it, you decided to get back at them by making up a story about forging documents. I felt the blood rush to my face with anger. That's a lie, an absolute lie. I know, Etta squeezed my hand. And most people who know you know it's a lie, too. But Solon knows how to be convincing. And some people are beginning to doubt. What should I do? I felt helpless in the face of this slander. How do I fight such rumors? For starters, Etta said firmly, you need a good lawyer, not only to defend yourself in the fraud case, but also for a possible libel suit against Solon. A lawyer, I sighed. I never thought I'd have to hire a lawyer against my own son. Not against your son, Etta corrected. Against the crooks who tried to steal your house. The fact that one of them is your son is unfortunate, but it doesn't change the nature of their actions. She was right, of course, but that didn't make it any easier. The next day, Etta arrived again, this time with a business card. Marion Willen, she said, holding out the card. The best family lawyer in Caldwell. I made an appointment to see her today at 3 o'clock. Etta, I don't know. I started, but she interrupted me. Adelaide Birdwhistle, you're going to this meeting, she said with steel in her voice. I'm not going to let you sit here and let Solon ruin your reputation. You've spent your whole life taking care of others. Hambert, Denby, your students. It's time you took care of yourself. I knew she was right, and at 3 o'clock we were already sitting in the office of Marion Willen, an energetic woman in her 50s with a sharp eye and a determined chin. Mrs. Birdwhistle, she said, after listening to my story, your case is quite clear. We have the notary's report of a forged signature. We have the testimony of witnesses. And if I understand correctly, your son actually confessed to what he had done when he visited you? Yes, I nodded, but he insisted it was for my own good. A classic excuse for cheaters. Marion shook her head. They always convince themselves that they're acting in the victim's best interest. It helps them deal with their guilt. What about the rumors that Solon is spreading? Etta asked. About Adelaide getting dementia? That's a serious accusation. Marion frowned. If we can prove that Mrs. Birdwhistle Jr. is deliberately spreading false information to discredit you, we can file a libel suit. But to do that, we need witnesses who can confirm they heard the rumors directly from her. Everyone knows everyone in Caldwell, Etta said. I'm sure we can find such witnesses. Good, Marion nodded. In the meantime, I recommend that you have a medical examination with a neurologist, a full cognitive test to confirm that you have no signs of dementia or other cognitive impairment. That would be important evidence in your favor. I'll do it, I said firmly. Etta and I walked out of Marion's office, and I felt a wave of determination rising inside me. I will not let Solon ruin my reputation. I won't let them take my home away from me. I will fight. Spring came to Caldwell, bringing with it the smell of blossoming apple trees and a warm breeze. It's been 6 months since the day I caught Denby and Celine at the notary's office. 6 months of court hearings, depositions, nervous waiting, and now it was finally over. I sat on the veranda of my house, the house that was now officially and irrevocably mine. The court had ruled that the deed of gift had been forged, and Denby and Solon's actions had amounted to attempted fraud. They received suspended sentences and heavy fines. What mattered most to me was that the truth had prevailed. Etta brought a lemonade and sat next to me in the wicker chair. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, handing me a glass. "About how things have changed," I said, taking a sip of the cool drink. 6 months ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Hambert, my son, maybe even my house. And now? And now you have freedom, Etta finished for me, and new opportunities. She was right. Those 6 months had changed me. The pain of Denby's betrayal wasn't completely gone. It wasn't likely to ever go away. But I'd learned to live with it. I became stronger, more confident, and most importantly, I realized that my life didn't end with Hambert's death or my son's betrayal. It just entered a new phase. "Have you decided what you're going to do with the house?" Etta asked, looking out at the garden where my favorite roses were blooming. "Yes," I nodded. "I'm selling it." Etta raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Really? But you fought so hard for it." "I fought for the right to decide his fate," I explained, "not to spend the rest of my life here. Too many memories, Etta, good and bad. I need to move on." "And where will you move to?" I smiled. "You know that little apartment complex next to your flower store? There's a second-floor apartment for sale there, with a balcony overlooking the park." Etta's eyes lit up. "You're going to live next to me? That's wonderful." I thought it was time for me to move closer to the city center. It's too far away from everything. I could walk to the stores, cafes, library, and your store, of course. Maybe help you with the flowers if you'll let me. "Would I let you?" Etta laughed. "I've dreamed of it. My back isn't what it used to be, and student helpers can never be relied on." We were quiet, enjoying the warm spring day and each other's company. "What about Denby?" Etta finally asked. "Is he still trying to contact you?" I sighed. Denby had really tried to get in touch since the trial. He called, sent letters of apology, even showed up on my doorstep once with a bouquet of flowers. But I wasn't ready to forgive him. Probably never will be. "Yeah, he called last week," I answered. "He said he and Celine were having serious financial problems. After the scandal, a lot of clients refused to do business with him. Reputation means a lot in this town." "What did you say?" I didn't say anything. I just listened, and then I said I was sorry, but there was nothing I could do. "That must have been hard," Etta said softly. "It was," I admitted. "He is my son, after all. But I can't trust him anymore, and I don't want Celine back in my life. She's still spreading rumors about me, you know. Now she says I'm out of my mind with grief and deliberately ruined my own son's career. People don't believe her, Etta said confidently, especially after the court ruled in your favor, and after that examination with Dr. Fowler, which confirmed that your cognitive functions are completely normal. I know that, but it still hurts. When Etta left, I stayed on the veranda, looking at the house and the garden that Hambert and I had spent decades creating. Every corner held memories. That's where Denby took his first steps. That's where Hambert built the swing, and that's where we planted the apple tree on our 20th wedding anniversary. But within these walls also lived the memory of betrayal, of Solon's cold eyes, of my own son trying to deceive me. I couldn't continue to live among these conflicting memories. I needed a clean slate. The next morning, I met with a realtor, not from the Denby agency, of course. A young woman named Jolie inspected the house and said it was in excellent condition and could be sold quickly and for a good price. The market is booming right now, Mrs. Birdwhistle, she explained, and your neighborhood is very popular. Big lots, beautiful old houses. I think we can put it on the market for $450,000. That seemed like a lot of money to me. Hambert and I bought this house for $70,000 almost 40 years ago. Of course, we've put a lot of work and money into it, but still. Are you sure? I asked. It's not new, but it's in perfect condition, Jolie said confidently. And it has character, unlike those new faceless boxes they're building now. Don't worry, Mrs. Birdwhistle. I'll find good owners for your house who will appreciate it as much as you do. I signed all the necessary papers, and within a week the garden had a for sale sign. Another 3 days later, Jolie brought in the first potential buyers, a young couple with a young daughter. This is Greg and Megan Fernio, Jolie introduced them, and their daughter Elodie, Fernio, same last name as Celine had before she was married. Coincidence? In a small town like Caldwell, it was unlikely, but they didn't look like Solon. Open faces, friendly smiles. Mrs. Birdwhistle, your house is lovely, Megan said as we sipped tea on the veranda after the tour. Especially that garden. I've always dreamed of having one for Elodie. The little girl, who was about 4, smiled shyly at me. Are you related to Solon Fernio? I dared to ask. Greg and Megan looked at each other. She's my cousin, Greg admitted reluctantly. But we haven't spoken to each other. We haven't spoken in years. I understand, I nodded. Mrs. Birdwhistle, Megan leaned toward me. We know what happened, and we want you to know that we had nothing to do with Celine and her methods. If our last name is a problem for you, we'll understand if you'd prefer other buyers. I looked at this sincere young woman, at her husband who was embarrassedly rubbing the edge of the tablecloth, at their young daughter who was curiously looking at the butterflies in the garden. They looked nothing like Solon. The last name isn't the problem, I said at last. It's the people who bear it that matter. They visibly relaxed, and the conversation flowed on. Greg worked as an engineer in a local factory. Megan was an elementary school teacher, like me once. They had long dreamed of a big house with a garden and were saving up for a down payment. But prices kept rising faster than our savings. Greg sighed. We almost gave up hope, and then we saw your house advertised. I loved that couple. And the thought of having a little girl growing up in my house, running around the garden, swinging on the swing that Hambert had once made for Denby, it seemed right. Jolie, I said when they had gone, I want to sell the house to them. But, Mrs. Birdwhistle, the realtor objected, we haven't even started showing yet. There may be buyers willing to pay more. I don't care, I said firmly. I want this house to go to a good family, a family that will value it not as an investment, but as a home. Jolie reluctantly agreed, and a month later the deal was closed. I sold the house to Greg and Megan for slightly below market value, but still got more money than I ever had before. More than enough to buy that condo next to Etta's store and still have a solid reserve for a secure old age. The day I was supposed to hand over the keys to the new owners, Denby showed up again. "Mom," he said when he saw the boxes stacked in the hallway, "are you really selling the house?" "I already did," I answered calmly. "To Greg and Megan Fernio. You know them?" He turned pale. "The Fernios? Solon's family? Her cousin and his wife, a very nice couple, and they have a lovely daughter. But why, Mom?" He looked confused. "Why are you selling the house you fought so hard for?" "Because I can do it by choice now, Denby. Not because I was cheated out of it, but because I chose to." He was silent, digesting my words. "Celine and I broke up," he said at last. "She left 2 months ago, took everything she could and disappeared. I wasn't surprised. Celine was always looking out for herself. When it became clear there was nothing more to squeeze out of Denby, she just found a new victim." "I'm sorry," I said, and it was true. Despite everything he'd done, Denby was still my son, and it hurt me to see him suffer. "I lost almost all my clients," he continued. "The bank took the house. I'm now living in a small rented apartment and trying to find a job. But no one wants to hire a real estate agent with a tarnished reputation." "What do you want from me, Denby?" I asked him straight out. "I don't know." He ran his hand through his hair. "Forgiveness? Help? A second chance?" "I can't give you any of those things," I said softly. "Not right now. Maybe never." "You betrayed me, Denby. Betrayed your father's memory. Some things can't be undone with a simple, 'I'm sorry.' I understand." He lowered his head. "But you're my mother. You're the only person I have left who's close to me." "You made that choice," I reminded him, "when you decided that money was more important than family." We stood in the hallway, where we'd greeted each other so many times with hugs and smiles. Now there was a chasm between us that might never be bridged. "I'm going to live in the apartment above Etta's flower store," I said at last. "If you ever want to talk, really talk, not ask for money or help, you know where to find me." Denby nodded and walked silently out. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. Part of me hoped that yes, that someday we could rebuild at least a semblance of a relationship. But the other part realized that some wounds were too deep to ever fully heal. An hour later, Greg and Megan arrived, excited and happy. I walked them through the house one last time, showing them where everything was, giving them tips on caring for the roses in the garden. "This house was full of love," I said as I handed them the keys. "I hope it will be a place for you to create happy memories too." "We'll make sure it does," Megan promised, squeezing my hand tightly. I walked around the rooms one last time, saying goodbye to the house that had been a part of my life for so long. There were still two smells in the bedroom, mine and Hambert's. In the kitchen, his laughter still seemed to echo. In the garden, every bush, every tree bore the imprint of his caring hands. "Goodbye," I whispered as I walked out the door. "And thank you for everything." Etta was waiting for me in the car. All my things had already been moved to the new apartment. I'd kept only the essentials and the things dearest to my heart. The rest I either sold or gave to charity. "Ready for a new life?" Etta asked, starting the engine. I looked back at the house one last time. Greg and Megan were standing on the doorstep with Alidi, waving goodbye to me. New family, new life for the old house. "Ready," I replied firmly and got into the car. My new apartment turned out to be exactly as I'd dreamed. Bright, cozy, with a large balcony where I could grow potted flowers. I had a view of Caldwell Central Park and Etta's flower store. The first night in the new place, I couldn't sleep for a long time. not because of the unfamiliar surroundings. The new bed was comfortable, and the sounds of the city outside the window were soothing. I couldn't sleep because my head was full of plans. During these 6 months, I realized that life doesn't end at 73, or after losing a husband, or after betrayal of loved ones. It just changes. And now, lying in my new bed, in my new home, I felt more alive than I had in years. In the morning, Etta came by with coffee and fresh scones. "How did you sleep in the new place?" she asked, setting the cups on the small table on the balcony. "Surprisingly well," I smiled, inhaling the aroma of the coffee. "You know, I was thinking yesterday." "About what?" "Traveling. I've never been outside of Idaho, Etta. Hambert didn't like to travel, and then there were always reasons to stay. Work, home, Denby. Where do you want to go?" Etta's eyes lit up. "I've always wanted to see the ocean," I admitted, "and the Grand Canyon, and New York with its skyscrapers, and New Orleans with its music." "So let's go," Etta exclaimed. "I can close up store for a couple weeks. Megan is Greg's wife, right? She said she works part-time as a florist. We could ask her to keep an eye on the store, and we'll take the car and go, right to the ocean." "Are you serious?" I couldn't believe it was possible. "Absolutely," Etta nodded firmly. "We both deserve a little adventure, don't we? And we both have money, time, and no obligations that would keep us here." It was true. For the first time in my life, I was completely free. Free to do what I wanted, to go where I wanted, to be who I wanted. "Let's do it," I decided. "Let's go to the ocean." We spent the whole morning bent over a map, plotting the route of our journey, from Caldwell to the Pacific Ocean, along the coast to San Francisco, then back home through the national parks. 2 weeks of freedom and new experiences. When Etta left, I went out on the balcony and took a long look at the city spread out below. Caldwell, where I'd lived all my life, where I'd married, had a son, worked, grown old. The town that had known me as Hambert's wife, Denby's mother, an elementary school teacher. Now I was just Adelaide Birdwhistle, a woman who, at 73, was starting a new life, who was going to see the ocean, learn to take care of flowers, maybe even get a cat. I smiled, feeling the warm spring wind caress my face. Hambert would be pleased. He always said I was stronger than I thought. And he was right. I've survived the loss of my husband, the betrayal of my son, the trial, the move. And now, instead of bitterness and despair, I felt only peace and anticipation. There was a new chapter of life ahead, and I was ready to write it.